Hello, and welcome to Leading Inspired Learning, a Strive podcast. Okay, welcome to Leading Inspired Learning, a Strive podcast. I'm Allie, and your host for today, and I am thrilled to welcome Mary Hewitt.
Happy to be here.
All the way from the Ottawa area.
Yeah, just outside of Ottawa.
Amazing. So you made the long drive to join us on the green couch.
That's right. That's right. Well worth it. It's very cozy.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We've been doing several events with you this year in 2026, a whole How Does Learning Happen series.
Right.
So we've had a virtual, we have an in-person, and there's more to come. So if you happen to miss Mary, there's still a chance to catch her.
Coming for you.
Yes, absolutely. So we've covered, which foundations did we cover already?
We've done, I believe the first one was belonging.
Okay. That was a virtual one.
Excuse me. I believe it was the belonging one. Was it actually though?
You know what?
Hopefully we can.
It's a blur.
Yeah. Anyways, it was either the well-being one or the belonging one that we've already done. And then I'm here this time for the expression foundation.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And then the engagement foundation will also be an in-person.
Yes, it will. Yes. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. One of my favorite sessions.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes.
It's so interesting because we're seeing a real trend right now in a lot of people wanting virtual sessions. So we've had really, really strong attendance, really exceptional engagement in those, and like less in person, which I'm surprised because usually come springtime, people are itching to get out and get into sessions. But we were actually just chatting in the office about how we wonder if when things are framed in this how does learning happen, people think, oh, I know how does learning happen. I don't have to attend it. I'm an expert on that. We've been doing that for years.
Right. Yeah.
And don't think that they need to continue to revisit these foundations.
Right.
Which I'd argue is not true.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the way I think of learning is, and I know many people talk about it this way, but it's a spiral, right? And so the first revolution, the first time you learned about how does learning happen, you picked up certain things, but then the spiral continues and you circle back to the same ideas, but you have a deepened lens because of the work that you do, because of other learning that's happened. And so every revolution, you're just going deeper and deeper and deeper is how I see it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I think too, if we're talking about being lifelong learners as early childhood educators, that doesn't mean that you are learning new topics all the time.
Right.
It does mean a revisiting of topics that you think that you've already covered, that you can focus a little more deeply on moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's great that Strive brings lots of different speakers in and voices in, because I think everyone brings their own lens too and their own world of experience. And so there's always more to learn for sure.
And that's the thing about our work. There's no one right way to do anything with children.
It's an art for sure.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
So tell us about you. Let's learn about Mary a little bit.
Okay.
You came from Ottawa today, but you said you're from the Windsor area.
I'm originally from Windsor. So for folks around here who are listening, the Bell River area more specifically. So on the outskirts of Windsor. Born and raised there. And then when I graduated from the University of Windsor, I sort of applied everywhere for work and ended up landing, my husband and I both landed in the same area, which just seemed like meant to be kind of thing. Sure. And so we're up, it's called Renfrew County. So a little bit out, it's called the Ottawa Valley. So just outside of Ottawa. And we live in the forest in a cottage, and that's my happy place. So been doing lots of different roles over the years. So started at John McGivney Center actually in Windsor. So did preschool, toddler there. And then when we moved up north, did about 7 years in the classroom in various roles, and then moved into working part-time at our local college there for the ECE program, which I did for 10 years. And and then into a leadership role for our, sort of holding the early years portfolio for our region and overseeing early on and all of those things. And then this now public speaking and consulting and coaching. And so it's been a very eclectic background, which serves me really, really well with what I'm doing now.
I love that. And so what made you make the jump into this type of work?
I think I was always headed here. It is the simplest answer. I love that saying, what you want wants you. And so I always knew I was headed in some sort of direction of doing this. I always saw myself working with educators more so than directly with the children, although I did do that for many years, and that was super necessary to understand this work. But always sort of knew that I would end up here, and truly it was just taking the brave leap. And I got less and less comfortable doing other roles, which I think was sort of maybe the powers that be edging me into this, where it was like, okay, it's time. And so then taking the leap, and this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And interestingly enough, right before I started this work, I got diagnosed with ADHD. And so I think that's partly why I never totally felt like I fit in government roles or, in other roles completely. I really, when I got that diagnosis, it was another reason for me to now create a life that aligns with my brain, that serves my brain back, and my brain can serve it. And that is definitely, the ADHD brain is a creative brain. And so, it works well for what I'm doing now.
We've heard, I personally and professionally have heard a lot more adult women being diagnosed with ADHD. And a lot of those similar things, it shows up very differently, I think, in men than women. So, we see a lot typically, I'm generalizing, and I don't mean to, but, we see a lot of perhaps children and young boys diagnosed with that, but then more and more older, not older. You're still young.
Oh, I'm older. It's okay.
But adult women being dosed. Like my best friend, for example, she was recently diagnosed with it too. So I think there is more. It feels like there's more science and more evidence and more information available to how that looks differently in a woman's brain with the hormones and all the other things going on. So that's an interesting journey. Yeah,
it has been. And the real tip off for me was actually the pandemic. And what happened for me, and I often wonder if this has been true for other women, is because I've noticed what you've noticed, where there's this influx of women saying, I finally got diagnosed and now I understand myself better and all those things. And for me, when the pandemic hit, it was truly the first time in most of my life, back to kindergarten, where I never had structures, schedules, routine in place for me. Grade school, high school, university, work
schedule.
All those things have these sort of built-in structures. And for me, structure, I thrive with structure. And so when that was taken away, I'll never forget in the first days of being at home, it felt like every morning, thinking of a computer, right, or the internet, it was like 20 tabs would open.
Yeah.
And it's, I'd have 10 projects going. And it was years before that I actually had, my husband actually thought I may have had it years prior to that. And so we approached it. I saw a psychologist, and as soon as I told him I had my master's, he stopped the interview, the appointment, and he said, "There's no way you could have ADHD and have a master's," which is really an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
And so it got missed for a few more years, but then when the pandemic hit, my symptoms, I guess, for lack of better words, just became more obvious. And so that was the sort of last push to find out more. And luckily I had a practitioner at the time that really understood it well and diagnosed me right away after some testing. So
and the advocating for yourself too, right? That's so important for sure.
Yeah.
And it's goes into well-being of educators is having to advocate, take care of yourself, recognize these things, and push for what you need.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you are not speaking and teaching and engaging in this work, what do you like to do in your not work time?
Oh gosh, what do I like to do?
You live in the woods.
I do live in the woods. So nature is nature's my church, I like to say, for lack of it's so healing for me to be in the forest, going for walks, gardening, anything outside. as soon as I walk out the door, I feel into a nature-rich environment. I feel this sense of being held or the sense of belonging that as soon as I walk indoors, it goes away. And so I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
But nature is a big one. Anything in nature. I also love to work out. I love reading. I'm into baking sourdough bread, and I have ADHD, so I have a lot of hobbies.
You got a lot of hobbies. I love that. I love hobbies.
It aligns.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing. The sourdough thing during the pandemic, I feel like it really spiked.
It did, yeah.
And still, like, my social media is full of it. And I'm like,
do
I want to do this, or is the internet just telling me I want to do this? I don't know, but
peer pressure.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. Well, that's great. So today you framed it as a bit of, we're going to find that missing puzzle piece in our well-being. So I'm intrigued. I feel like I'm almost going to like enter this like self-help conversation here, and I'm here for it. I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm always there for those conversations too. I certainly, one of the things I recognize is, again, I think since the pandemic, I know we don't want to talk about it anymore, but I think it was a big nudge towards, I have to relentlessly take care of myself now. Like I have to really claim.
Ooh, I like that word, relentlessly.
Yeah. And that's what I had to do. And I know many people in my circle, it sort of was like the last nudge where it was like, I really have to start being very intentional with how I use my time, who I surround myself with. It was like a reset for a lot of people, I think. And people are talking about mental health more since the pandemic, all those things. So for me, I reached a place where, I had done all the traditional self-care things. And that's why I think it's such a tricky topic to I guess teach on, is because there's this aversion to, I've done the spa days, I've done the workout routine, I've done the meditation, and why am I still feeling so stuck? And also, I don't want someone to tell me how to take care of myself. And I completely get that. I completely get that. It is a very personal thing. So all of those things combined, when I sat, but at the same time, there is this real desire to be intentional with our well-being. And so when I thought about doing this session, I really took my time in terms of how I wanted to approach it. And the way I frame it is, it's not about adding more things to do with your life. It's not about adding more routines, more structures, more 10 ways. It's about none of that. It's actually about getting back to trusting yourself. We're introduced to this culture and sort of conditioned by this culture to believe that we have to do the 10 ways. We have to do the workout program or the weight loss program or this to be enough or to be well or to whatever we're striving for. And I think when you hear that over and over again, you lose touch with that intuition part of yourself, that part of yourself that always knows what's good and right for you. Because we're given these structures all the time that say, don't trust yourself, trust me, and then buy my product.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that we've been fed for a long time. And so this session that I offer on this is really about coming home to yourself. It's the shift, the way I like to sort of boil it down, it's the shift from trying so hard to be good girl, good enough, good educator, good mom, good whatever, uncle, to being well. And what does that mean for you? I mean, in the session, I actually don't offer any, if you do this, or, because it's really about the person coming back to themselves.
Right.
And so what I find so interesting every time it's my most requested session. And so I've delivered it many, many times. And what I find as a trend is that people, when I move them and facilitate them through what would actually help you arrive at being well. What would a well life look like for you if you could curate it?
Yeah. And
it's more often than not, it's about getting back to the basics, and it's actually about subtracting more than it is about adding. You know, I'll never forget the first time I offered it. It was right before Thanksgiving, and I was with a room of educators from early on and from childcare, and one of the early on folks said, you know what, Mary, would make me feel well is to go to one Thanksgiving instead of 3.
Yeah, I feel that.
And yeah, you feel it. It's like, yeah, that's an exhale.
Yeah.
But then there's like, but it comes at a cost, right?
And guilt,
that's true.
And
that's also true, that some of the things that are going to make us well will come at a cost.
Right.
And some of them are easier. Some of them are, you know, petting your dog. That doesn't cost me anything, but it makes me feel really well to be present with my dog for 10 seconds. Yeah. Whereas setting a boundary like that, when you've done the tango so long with someone else and then that's what they're used to you doing, and then you switch it to the foxtrot, it's like, what are you doing? You've always come to our Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a big shift, which can come at a cost relationally. Yeah. So what I advocate for with folks is doing it in small increments. Start small. Start with the lower cost stuff. Start there, and then, you know, tick it up, and then, you know, don't go leave my session and try to like
cancel all your Thanksgiving plans.
Yeah, don't isolate yourself and overhaul your whole life. But where can you take 1 degree turns in the right direction? Yeah. And, you know, quite transparently, I hit a wall the reason this emerged for me, I never talk about anything that isn't rooted in research and also something I've lived. And so I truly several years ago hit a wall, a hard wall of, you know, the only way I existed in the world was to please others. And I had lost myself so much, I became so unwell that it was like, okay, I have to relentlessly reclaim my life. And I took these intentional, some were big, some were small, but creating this life that serves me back, where I don't have to go out and grab for 10 ways or 5 ways, or it's like I actually am creating a life that is serving me back. And I will say, after doing that for months, it was like I woke up one morning and realized I feel really comfortable in my life. I feel really served by my life, and I'm not chasing a lot anymore. You know, I'm not, I am coming back into my body again. I am landing there. Yeah. And I am finding my intuition, which is saying, you know, maybe this isn't the right move. You know, our body has so much wisdom. Yes. But we've been taught to not trust our bodies in so many ways. My intuition, though, is one of my main, if not the main guiding force in my life now. And so, you know, we've talked about, I like giving examples because it makes it more tangible. But, you know, I don't know if you can relate to this, Allie, but I was one of those people where it was like, okay, I'm a bad friend if I don't keep up with every single person I've known since high school that I was close to every 2 weeks. I'm a bad friend. Yeah. And if you really objectively stand back from that, is that even, like, can you be well and actually keep up with everybody? No. It's not reasonable.
Quality over quantity. Yeah. I say when it comes to friendships.
Yes.
And I, you know, my best friend and I will often go for periods of time where we don't talk, but we, you know, you see something on Instagram and send it to each other, and you still do the quick check-in, like, hey, thinking about you, but we don't have the same type of catch-ups as we did when we were living together in university, and we were having those daily things. And it took us a while. I mean, we've been friends for 20 years now, but it took us a while to be like, you know, it's okay that our friendship ebbs and flows. We know we still love each other and are there for each other no matter what, and have been there through thick and thin for this long. It doesn't have to be the daily minutia of everything that we have to be, because that ends up being one more thing. Having to text back and forth with a friend, it's a lot, for sure. It is
a lot, and it really takes the joy, I think, out of any relationship to feel this, strong, I have to, I should.
Yes.
I mean, it really crushes the sweet spot of relationships. And, it sounds like the friend you're talking about, this is a relationship where you guys both have this unspoken understanding. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that relationship serves you back, is that probably in many other things.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
But, my social circle now is about 5 or 6 people, truly, that I keep up with on a regular basis. And yeah, it's true. A lot of people didn't understand why I was backing off initially, although I you try to communicate it. Yeah. But it's a hard thing to understand, and I get that. But again, it was like I really had to be intentional. I really had to, sort of think about, what is going to make me well with my social circle, and then, applying that to all these other areas of my life too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so hard too when you layer in all the factors of life, like I have 2 small children now. Right. So, I'm the only parent. Their dad passed away. So it means that I can't leave my house after 7:00 at night.
Right.
Because I have 2 sleeping children.
Right.
So, my friends have to come to me a lot more than I can go to them.
Right.
And it's navigating those seasons of life with it through and being able to communicate it, but also not feeling like you have to over explain, because then that becomes taxing too.
Yes, it does. Yeah. It absolutely does. And ultimately, it's so true that, when you create this life that serves you back, this life in the vein of being well instead of good, it sort of naturally, for lack of better words, weeds out the folks that, maybe you need a little distance from, and brings in closer those relationships that really nurture you. That's what was my experience. Yeah. I was spending so much time on about 3 or 4 people, trying to please them. They needed a lot from me. Yeah. And so I was on this hamster wheel of pleasing them over and over and over again. And when I really sort of gave a little distance and space there were all these other people, these wonderful people waiting on the, outside, sort of like just waiting to breathe life into my life. Yeah. And I can give that back now. But it sort of naturally starts to sort things out. That doesn't mean it's easy. Yeah. But it's a messy process at many times.
Well, I think too, we work in a sector that's so relational, and you are with people, engaging with people all day, every day, your coworkers, your colleagues, your boss, your manager, your director, the children, the families. Like you are, for 8 plus or less hours a day, you're in relationship. Right. Yeah. To then have to also pour so much into friendships outside of that. Yeah. It's hard. And I think given the work that we do, actually I saw some quote recently, probably on social media. I spend a lot of time on social media.
A lot of us do.
I love it. But it was like, having actual friendships at work also increases productivity. And, we're really fortunate here that I think a lot of us in our office are friends and colleagues. Right. And there is a style of leadership that doesn't necessarily appreciate that. There are some that do. I, as a manager, think the more laughter I hear in the office, we're doing a good job.
Absolutely. Yes.
If it's silent in here, there's that feels wrong. Right. When I'm hearing laughter pop up all over the place, it brings me so much happiness. Yeah. And I know it does for those people too. So I think it's also, you are in relationship with your colleagues all day, every day, and the children. And how do you find the joy in those relationships that you're, for lack of a better word, forced to spend time with all day? And on top of, your personal relationships that you have to give in, because there's something there too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's face it, proximity is where a lot of our relationships live. Yep. And I think there's many factors that contribute to that. But that is just what's real in many ways. It's who's on our, and, also sort of rethinking friendship of, is it okay that I had a friend for a season? Yeah. And this season we're apart. Yeah. And maybe that comes back in another season. But in this season, I've got my colleagues at work. I've got a few friends. I've got a couple of core family, whatever it might be. I've got my kids.
Yep.
And right now that's my tight circle.
Yeah.
And that's what serves me. And, you know, I think even being able to rethink relationships as, you know, is it such a horrible bad thing if we look at it like, you know, this may just be for a season.
Right.
You know, and that's okay.
Did you struggle with? I do struggle with feeling like doing the things that I feel like serve me. So I talked about I love interior design. I also love like DIY projects. If I have a power tool in my hand, like literally my heart rate, I can track it on my app. When I have power tools in my hand, my heart rate goes down. Like,
wow, amazing.
It is my outlet.
Yes.
But then I feel selfish when I'm taking time to work on a project.
Yeah.
And I'm not spending time with my children or my family or my friends or doing the marking that I need to be doing for the course I teach.
Right.
Or, you know, that's mind, I guess, dialogue in my own brain is what prevents me from doing that more.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think about, and I think that's so relevant for all of us. You know, I think many we can all relate to that on some level. I'm claiming something for myself, and maybe it means I have less time with my kids today. Maybe it inconveniences someone else, but this is for me, and I'm gonna claim it. And I like how Dr. Becky Kennedy talks about this, where she says guilt. Let's look at what guilt is. And she says, guilt is when you live out of alignment with your values. That's when guilt is warranted. That's what, you know, guilt is a positive thing. If I scream at someone in the line at Starbucks and then I leave and I feel guilty, you know, that guilt, this is just a random example. Yeah. I went to Starbucks and didn't yell at anyone.
Good. We don't want to get reports.
It's not something I do, but it's just a very vivid example. But let's say that happens. Someone took your coffee, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you get upset with them, you know, in an off sort of way, and then you leave. That guilt sinking in is the momentum that tells you, oh, I lived out of alignment with my values. I need to go back and make this right. And then, so I love that framing, because when I feel guilt, as I do, about some of the things that I claim for myself, I try to remember, like, am I living out of alignment with my values, or am I very much living into my values right now? And, you know, can that help me sort of draw some lines here and realign a little bit? I love, it's such a silly example, but I remember hearing about this example. I love it. It was this parent who loved to go walking every day. Busy mom. And every time she went for a walk, she felt guilty. And so she started, I don't know if it's from Game of Thrones, I didn't watch that show, but she started this thing where before she'd leave the house, as she walked out the door, she'd say, "For the good of the kingdom," and then she'd leave. And it was sort of this like mantra that she had, where it was just like, yeah, this is good for me and it's good for everybody, and I'm claiming it, I'm taking it, I'm moving, you know, I'm gonna do this thing. And, you know, I think I'm a really big believer in those simple mantras. What do you need to hear in this season of your life that you can keep in your back pocket? Maybe it's, I'm worthy.
Yeah.
Maybe when you pick up that power tool and the guilt sinks in, it's I'm worthy, or you know, this brings me joy. Right. You know, whatever it is. I think those little things, what do we need to hear to, you know, if we're really trying to intentionally create this well life, which means we're maybe letting a lot of people down, but taking care of ourselves. What's the mantra that can help us be sturdier in those moments? You know? And sort of when those feelings well up, making a little space for them too, you know, trying to recognize what's going on. Okay, I'm feeling guilt. I'm feeling, you know, whatever, fear, whatever it might be, tension. And, you know, can I let that belong for a minute? Can I let that live for a minute? And then can I speak to it with kindness? You know? Right now I'm claiming this for myself because it aligns with my value. It aligns with the life I'm trying to create for myself. I am worth this, Anyway,
Yeah.
those are lots of different angles on that. But.
We know that, educator burnout is a real thing.
Yeah.
That this is a really demanding profession. It asks a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And educators, we know that, the whole side of it, the advocacy side of it around, the wages, etc. Like we know that exists too. So that contributes. But when educators are feeling close to burnout or they're feeling overwhelmed by everything and don't even know where to begin. You talked about 1 degree turns. What's the first step?
When I think about the educator, the first step.
I know we didn't want to do, step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yeah.
But I feel like we need a place to start for those who, I know I love power tools, but some may not even know what the outlet is to even start claiming it.
Yeah.
So how do they even begin?
Well, there's a lot of talk about getting back to your why in your work. Why did you get into this field? What revs you up every day and keeps you here? Because there are
it's not just the paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. So what is keeping you here? Maybe it's observing children with curiosity. Maybe that really and sort of researching the documentation you have, and that really helps you get to these deeper layers of seeing what's going on in the moment. Maybe it's the relationship with families. Maybe it's supporting children with special rights. What is it? What's the thing that sparks you up in the work that you do? And that might change too. That can change too, I think, and I think it does as you learn. And we talked about the spiral of learning at the beginning. I think it can change based on something new you've learned, and now you're taking it back. I think that is a really great place to start, and maybe looking at, when I hear burnout, I think about values, because burnout is often a result of living outside of our values. And so I think there's real merit in stepping back and going, okay, where am I living outside of what I hope for this program, for me as an educator? Where have I lost my joy, and why? Right? If it's mealtime and it's a time of the day where you just feel like you're slogging through the snow, right? Because it just feels like this immense chore, and the children are chaotic and whatever it might be. Okay, if that's a time of day where you've really lost your joy, you really feel like something is off, then what are your hopes and dreams for meal times? Like, what does that look like for you? And we sort of resisting the urge to go, well, I can dream all I want, but it's just not possible. Well, just establish the dream first, and then notice how, by having that really intentionally placed at the forefront, you start to take these small movements towards it. Maybe it's, maybe meal times is for you a time where relationship really matters. You really want it to be a time of connecting. And maybe it's turned into a time of crowd control. And so this is why you're slogging through the snow.
Right.
And so then it's about, okay, we dream that mealtime can be a time when, children are connecting, children are having conversations, children are smiling at each other, they're laughing, whatever it might be. And just having that intention, that dream, that vision in front of you, I think it changes the way we move out of hopelessness into this place of possibility. And so things we thought would never be possible just start to naturally sort of unfold.
When I like how you framed it as more about what are you hoping to almost feel at this time, as opposed to, focusing on what this looks like or the practicality of it, as start dreaming with what does mealtime feel like for everyone involved, as opposed to, I really like that positioning, because I think you're right. It's really easy for educators to slip into this is just the way we have to do it. And then we only get, our food only comes at this time. We have to get beds on this time, and the time pressure and all the things that go into mealtime, and the milk spilled, and, all of those other things. It can get really easy to get caught up in in those types of mindsets.
Yes.
Whereas if you are focusing on what do we hope to everyone feels during mealtime,
right,
that's such a powerful thing.
Yeah. I think it changes the way we move into mealtime.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're changed, our practices change. And the way we respond to the milk spilling changes.
Yeah.
So that's what I think about a lot is anywhere, care. I'm thinking a lot lately about care.
Yeah.
And the pedagogy of care.
Yeah.
And care can be a time when we often feel like we're slogging through the snow. Because it can be repetitive, all of
you have
those
10
things.
diapers to change.
Yeah.
It starts to feel monotonous and not intentional.
Right. Not engaging, whatever it might be. Yeah. Or routines often involve transitions, which can be tricky times for kids and for us. And so, I think if part of your work, around care, let's say, or that transition to outside or doing snowsuits or whatever it might be is really feeling like a tough time, like you have lost your joy in that moment, get back to asking, what do I hope, what do I dream for this to feel like, for this to be like, and write it out, few sentences, like sit down with your teaching partner and really dream it up, because then we get to these deeper levels of what care is really about. And care is actually the heart of everything that we do. It really, really, truly is. And but it can get into this place because we're so busy. It can feel monotonous and dry at times, or chaotic at times, or whatever it might be. And so getting back to dreaming, reimagining, and then stick it up somewhere and file it for. I think of visuals as like filing it forward every day. That's our dream. That's what we hope. Get a picture that reminds you of what that family feel you want at mealtime. Or, a bit of the camaraderie you want at that transition outside. And once you realize, like, I want transitions to be, maybe a little more joyful, right? Then maybe the little scream here or the little giggle here or the child off task becomes like this rich moment,
right?
So getting back to some of that, it sounds a little, woo-woo, but getting back
whimsical.
to I think there's so much value in that. And really thinking about what do we hope and dream for this to feel like, to look like, and just bringing that forward, not having to go, here's the 10 things we're going to do, but just feel your way into it and notice how, because you've changed, that routine starts to change. And then the joy starts to come back, because now that dream you created was in alignment with those core values. For that sense of family, that sense of camaraderie, that joy, whatever it is. That's where I see a lot of burnout start to emerge, is when we are really, really, we've lost sight of our values. We've lost sight of the dream. We've lost sight of the hope. And so how do we come back to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, too, there is a lot weighing on educators societally, from families, from parents, from, they should be doing this at this time.
Right.
I remember my son when he was in preschool, he's very capable of putting his own socks on, but would he rather someone help him? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And his educator at the time, we butted heads quite a bit. Well, he needs to be independent. Well, he's 2.5.
Yeah.
And if he wants me to help put his socks on in the moment of care, I'm choosing to do that as a parent. And I would hope that you would choose to do that as an educator, instead of this push for independence to make your life easier.
Yeah.
I understand there's 16 children. You have 8 in your group. That's 16 feet that you have to put socks on. I understand that's a lot.
Right.
But how can we look at those moments of, instead of being like, ugh, I have to help you again, you can't do this on your own yet, to, how can I offer care in these moments? And I think, too, there is this whole, which I despise this like get ready for kindergarten,
Mm-hmm.
and preschool educators in particular feel like they have to have the children at a point that they're ready for kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, let me tell you, I did none of that with my son before he went to kindergarten, because I think it's kindergarten's job to get them ready for kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a whole lot of layers to that.
Yes.
But I didn't force him to write or to number. Like, you know, we did it during play, but it wasn't
right.
a forced thing. This 4-year-old boy is doing math that I need to secretly get my calculator out
Yeah.
because I can't do the math, and he's doing it.
Yeah.
So the kids are going to be okay.
Yeah.
If we let go a lot of these pressures, I think, weighing on our shoulders as educators to get them ready for whatever that may be,
Mm-hmm.
the kids are okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Mm-hmm.
If you let go of that, that's one of those things that you can let go of.
Yeah.
How does that impact your day, you know?
And the thing I love that we're moving into this conversation about the children, because the reason my session on well is for educators is because of the flip we do when we talk about children. Essentially, when I'm talking about the educator, I'm just talking about the adult, the grown-up.
Yeah.
But it really becomes about educators, because this way of being, this creating this well life, this moving away from being good, actually, it's so important that translates to our practice. And so looking at our children and going, what does well look like for this child in this moment?
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe today, well looks like I help with the socks. And yesterday I didn't have to, but today I do. And maybe there's a reason for that I can't see. Yeah. And so I think that's a big one, because if we sort of rewind a bit, how did we as adults get to this place of being so focused on what it means to be good?
Yeah.
Like, how do I be, good in school? How do I be
A+
good at
gold star? Yeah.
How did we get so focused on that? And really thinking about, we can do this differently for the next generation.
Yeah.
But it starts with, you know, moving away from this idea that children need to behave a certain way or show up in the world a certain way, and really look at, what does well look like for this child, and really helping them continue to honor, advocate for themselves, and live into that. And, you know, I think that's such an important piece too. What does well look like for that child who today is just really struggling with their socks?
Yeah. For sure.
You know, so that's the flip of sort of flip side of this in terms of our practice. And I think when you do this for yourself and you start to feel the effects of claiming it for yourself, boy, you want it for other people. And so it just starts to be this way you show up in the world again, because you're sort of getting to the roots of yourself. And so that child that's feeling that big feeling, I'm not as afraid of it, because that's what's making him well in this moment, is to be a little sad.
Yeah, to feel the feeling.
To feel the feelings. And it doesn't matter that it's, you know, someone is expecting that they just, you know, line up, or they just do the thing, or they behave, or they are obedient.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
it's a bit of a control thing, I think, that happens out there too. And I think, you know, I see it with teachers and ECEs of like wanting a bit of obedience and that sense of control over things.
Right.
That's hard to let go of. I'm a type A, you know. Do I experience it with my own children? You know, it's one of the reasons that we don't do a lot of messy play in my house, is because it feels a little out of control for me. I'll let them do that at childcare and at school. But I think there is also recognizing, you know, why am I demanding this child do this at this time? And it's hard in those moments to zoom out.
Yes.
I think in those tough transitions, in those moments where you're in a power struggle with a child, we've all been there. It's hard to like pause and zoom out and say, you know, is this being well for both of us in this moment?
Right.
No. And that's a hard skill to learn too.
I want to go back to something you said earlier in your comment. You mentioned being a parent and something
Those
around
power struggles.
Well, this idea that in the raising of children, whether you are a parent or an educator, there are so many pressures
Yes.
on us to raise children a certain way. And so, and the thing I'm noticing more and more is that even from the generation before us versus the way we're raising kids now and the way educators are raising children now, because they are raising children too.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very different. They're two extremely different approaches for the most part. You're sort of on either end of the spectrum here.
Which I feel like happens every generation.
Yeah.
Almost.
I mean, the pendulum's swinging,
Yeah.
right? But high obedience
Yeah.
is how a lot of us were raised. I don't want to, broad stroke that it was all of us, but a lot of us were raised to be obedient.
Yep.
And
I was raised on sticker charts.
Yeah.
And now I need a sticker.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so now it's like, okay, I see how this has impacted me. And so now I want to maybe shift that focus a little bit away from obedience and being seen and not heard and all of the messages we receive to, emotions are okay. Doing it that way is okay. Wearing those clothes that way, whatever it is, that, we want children to honor who they are.
Yeah.
So that they maybe don't have to take this long journey back to themselves later.
I find in those moments too, I think I've shared this story before, but when I was a director of a center, my office window was right to the outside to the playground. I was new to the center and there was no air conditioning. So my window was open all the time. And all I heard outside was the educator saying, no, don't ride your bike on the safety surface. No, like don't ride your bike. No. It was constantly saying no. And I finally went out and I was like, why?
Yeah.
So I think in these moments where you're saying no a lot, you're in these power struggles, that like asking or having your colleague or your co-partner in the classroom say like, okay, why?
Right.
Why not?
Right.
I took my daughter for her first haircut on the weekend and there was, those like, they have like a chair that's a plane and a chair that's a cab and one that's a fire truck and only two were being used. The other one was empty. And there's also like a little climber in this haircut place. So they're playing around.
Sounds great.
It was great. They're playing around. We're having a fun time. Scotty wants to go into the one that was empty. It was like a cab or something. So I pick her up. She sits in the cab. I figure this is a good practice, before she gets her actual haircut. Right. All good. And there was another parent there. So Scotty got out. The other child wanted to go in the cab and the parent said no. And I didn't want to be like, well, why not? But if moments like this of like, why are we saying no to this? Why are we, can we question these moments of it to help us reframe what those core values are that you were talking about and why we're doing what we're doing is questioning in those moments. Well, why am I saying no to this?
Right.
Is this a ministry policy? Because that's always what we hear too, these inherited rules that happen. And oh, well, we can't turn the fluorescents off because of ministry.
Right.
Okay, well, look, show me that. Yeah, there has to be a certain level of light in the room, but even with the fluorescents off, we can still see.
Right.
Like, are we questioning? Are we having that critical lens? Yeah. Is that helping us live into our core beliefs and our why and our, wellness as educators too?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that standing back and really, sort of taking the double take on why is this a rule? Is this true? What might be truer in this moment? Yeah. I think that's such an important practice. I think what often gets in the way of it is there's this, because educators are so busy and there's so much going on, it turns into this day of I must streamline everything because there's just so much happening. I feel like I'm burning out. And this other way of being where you nurture children in being well and being who they are and having emotions, it's messy.
Yeah.
It's much messier. It's much cleaner looking.
And feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. To have children who are just obedient to you. You feel more in control. But it's such a disservice to children, as we know, because, if that's maybe a way that you were raised, you can see where it's a disservice.
For sure.
And so I think that's a big piece is am I doing this just to streamline my day because I'm feeling burnt out? Or is there a really valid reason for this right now where I'm sort of, you know, overriding the child's voice in this moment? And there's so many layers to that. You know, do we see children as equal partners? Do you know, all of the all the pieces around children's rights too come into play, but
that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Yeah, exactly. But if educators are feeling, you know, I empathize with that because their jobs are so complex and busy, that if they're feeling like I'm just trying to streamline, I'm just trying to hold everything together, to go back to, okay, what are the parts of your day where you feel that especially strong, especially present, that you have to control, like your high control? Your high must streamline, don't want anything to go wrong, I don't have the bandwidth in this moment. And those are the moments where we need to go, okay, I've moved in, I've lost my spark for this important moment, this important transit. This is, you know, thinking about outdoor play. You know, it can be this time when we're like, oh, the children are fine, and there's this level of like disengagement, and we do want to give children space to play and explore and all of those things. But you know, if we're just looking at, you only go on this path and you don't use the mud kitchen and you only certain days and all those things, if there's all these confines, all these ways we're trying to control and micromanage, we need to step back and go, okay, where I've lost my intention in this moment, I've lost where my values are at, I feel completely burnt out in this moment, I don't have the bandwidth. What do we want outdoor play to feel like for children? What do I want it to feel like for me as an educator? What richness do I want to feel? Do I want to experience? And then getting really intent. Maybe it's going for some professional learning on outdoor play to sort of bring back that spark, get some new ideas, get reinvigorated. That's why I believe in professional learning so much, is it breathes life into our practice. It's the great realignment if it's good PD, right? And so I think that is such an important piece to stay on that train. But yeah, it's but taking that question into our lives, what does well look like for me in this moment, where I would typically just go into a conditioned space, what does everyone want from me space, instead of what do I actually want and need. Living that out in our own lives, and then also living that out in the classroom for children, because we recognize the baton we're passing, and we want it to be one where children learn to honor themselves, and aren't so focused perhaps on compliance, on pleasing others, on all of those things. We want children to be free. Absolutely. I mean that's at the heart of it. And so I think it's an
art.
It is an art, and it's a big practice, and it's a big shift, but small steps in the right direction, it starts to permeate your whole life.
Sure.
So,
well, and I think too, connecting it back to even what you were saying earlier personally about being in nature and how it grounds you. I think when child-led play became the thing, the pendulum almost swung too far, and we removed educators out of the equation so much, where you couldn't visibly see when you walked into a room who that educator was, what their passion was, what their joy was. And I think we're finding our way back to that middle ground where, you know, an educator who is passionate about outdoor play can help support that, and maybe they're spending more time outside, and maybe there are other elements that are coming into play there. Maybe that educator who loves to play guitar is bringing their guitar into program and playing music with the children. And you know, how are we bringing our own personal wellness and things that we do in order to live our passions and live our best lives forward in our programs too. We're not in a day and age anymore, I would hope, that, you know, you have to completely check your personal life at the door. You're still a full and complete human, even when you're working. And just because you love to play guitar outside of your working hours doesn't mean you don't love to play guitar while you're working. Can we bring that into program? You know, if you're really passionate about advocacy, is that showing up in your work? What are those other pieces that are living throughout and aren't just close that chapter and now I can come into my day with children.
Right.
I love seeing who educators are, sharing their culture, their beliefs, their passions with the children and families. Yeah. My daughter's educator, she loves Crocs and the little like widget things. And and so Scotty every morning loves to look at what widget things she's got on her Crocs today. And that's part of her. And I love that we get to see educators as full and complete humans and not just these robots that care for our children,
Yeah. And along that line, when we think about any time we have someone, whether it's in a TV show or someone we know personally or a child, anytime someone is truly living into their authenticity, whether it's a passion they're pursuing or the way they dress or the way they think about something, and it's not all about fitting in and being conventional. They're just showing up as they
authentically,
are. Yes, and letting who they are show on the outside. When people offer those gifts to the world, what do we say? We always say, thank you.
Yes.
Because every time you see someone who's free, it frees you a little bit more. It gives you the courage to bring a little more of yourself forward. And that's why getting back to I think reclaiming our well has so much to do with just living into who we are, being authentic, being brave enough to be authentic. Because truly, anytime someone is vulnerable and does the thing, plays the guitar or sings the song or wears what they want to wear, we go, thank you. That's a gift to me too. That's a gift to me too.
Yeah.
The other thing I like to think about with this is if there's a part of your day as an educator where you're feeling like, I have all these ways that I could bring my passions in or my values in, but maybe I don't feel like my teaching partner would understand, or maybe their approach is so different, or maybe my leadership wouldn't understand and would push back. Then that's another thing that we need to look at is, how do we have these brave conversations with people around our values and how it's important that we, understand where other people are coming from, what are their values and what are ours, and we are in this space together. So how do we honor both of those? Versus going, well, you're just not letting me do this. There's no space for me. We get into this big tension, and it often comes down to the values are on very different ends of the spectrum. One person loves risky play, the other person loves safety.
Yeah.
And control or whatever.
Yep.
And so having that conversation with the other educator around values and approaches to practice and those things, and we're not asking the other person to completely abandon who they are, but we are asking for more space for both to coexist. And what does that look like? How can we both do that in a way that isn't completely uncomfortable for someone? So there's edging towards that. And then, I think about leadership a lot with this. And I know you mentioned that earlier. Yeah. I do a lot of work around this shift towards humanity. I call it humanity-driven leadership. And it's all about being this leader who is about making other leaders. That's your whole job. Yeah. And so what does that look like? And often it's about leaning into vulnerable conversations and, about seeing people more clearly and about seeing their humanity. And, there's all these elements to it, but there's tiers to it's a web, right? Yeah. So the more folks we have with a lens towards honoring our humanity versus being robots. I mean, that on every level for children, for families, for leaders, the leaders need to feel this too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's this multi-pronged sort of approach where I think we see the richest results when you have a leader that here's your idea and says, run with it. Yeah. Like, I can't wait to see this happen. I can't wait to, experience this with you and watch how it brings your program to whatever. Yeah. I think all of these shifts are necessary to not that if you're the first one, it's not possible.
Yeah.
Has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think leaders really need to own what is their approach. What's the unsaid, unspoken message that their approach might be sending? And is it where we really invite educators to be authentic, or is it where we're inviting them to be robotic?
Yeah.
As you said earlier.
Yep.
And this dynamic of power comes in on all these fronts.
Yeah.
Power over children,
Yep.
power over teams, power. And so that model, when I do this work around humanity-driven leadership, we actually dig into history because there's historical roots in that.
Yeah.
It comes from the Industrial Revolution. Our first model for work was, I'm in charge, get the product out on the assembly line fast, and I don't care who you are as a person.
Right.
I want to make money.
Yeah.
We need to make money, and we need to produce and, feed this, machine sort of thing. And so that was the first model of leadership.
Right.
And that has affected the way we parent.
Yeah.
It's affected the way we certainly lead and manage.
Yeah.
It also affects the way we are with each other. Like it has all of these, anywhere where power could exist, this message we've inherited, this way of being we've inherited, where it's all about control and obedience, comes into play. Yeah. And so, and as I said before, I think about with the leadership lens, it's often, again, it feels much better to us to be in this place of high control, right? Because it's like, I know what to expect. There's this comfort.
That streamline thing you were talking about. Same for leaders, right?
It's exactly the same, and whereas this approach where you're really honoring people's humanity, you're having real conversations, you're addressing things head on and with compassion and all of these layers to it, it's messier. And take that as evidence that you're letting people be human. And if there's no messiness, then there's something missing. And people are probably internally holding on to an awful lot. Yeah. And it's going to start coming out. Yep. In ways that can really cause a lot of issues. So it's all of these layers for sure.
It's so complex. And we mentioned it earlier too, this is not easy work at any level, leadership and beyond. And I think there's so much to unpack there too, even with, the diversity, equity, inclusion lens of leadership. And, these white supremacist cultures, these perfectionist qualities, these characteristics. There's so much to unpack there. We could, dive in a whole other layer of this too. But I think it's so important that regardless, educator, child educator, leader, that if really what I'm hearing is if we're all focusing back on what brings us joy, what makes us feel well and whole and complete, then that's the beginning. Yeah.
What makes us come alive?
Yeah.
What makes the children come alive? What makes our educators come alive? What makes our leaders come alive? Yeah. I just did a big leadership retreat in Prince Edward Island, and it was this amazing journey over 3 days, and tears were shed, lots of laughter, lots of breakthroughs. And I mean, it was just so powerful. And I think about, as I left that retreat, I thought about how brave they were to show up and embrace this different way to lead. And they truly did. And then I would love to be a fly on the wall and the ripple effect this is going to have.
That's always the question with professional learning, isn't it? It's just like, I wonder where this went.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we hear in through reflective feedback of impacts to practice and that change that occurs. Sometimes we never know. Right. We just hope that, our intention always, I'm sure yours is as well as a facilitator, is really that there is positive impact to children and families.
Yes. Right.
That's the intention long term. We do it in the longer way to get there. We aren't the ones directly working with children and families, but the hope is that whatever professional learning is being offered, whatever leadership sessions are happening, that is resulting ultimately in a positive impact for children and families.
Yeah.
Because that's what matters in our work. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think remembering that child is so important. I often go back to my days in the classroom and think of those little faces and, you know, so much I learned from children. There's so much wrapped up in that, but yeah, keeping that child at the center is so key. Yeah. But I think there's also just so much value in, you know, making this space for ourselves to come alive. And the message that is often sent to that I think gets absorbed, and there's truth to it and there's merit to it, is like, you know, I talked about a little bit earlier where it's like when you nurture yourself, there's going to be this overflow and benefit all the people around you. I like to push back on that a little bit and say, but also you're enough of a reason. That mindset
is that it's still for
is
someone
yet
else.
another reminder. Yeah. And in the work we do keep children at the center, and that's so pivotal that we don't over-center ourselves.
Right.
Because I think when we lose curiosity, we lose seeing the deeper layers of what's going on with the children and the relationship and connection piece. But I think it's like two things can be true.
Yeah.
And I love this idea that, you know, I am enough of a reason to create a life for myself where I come alive. And yes, there will be overflow, and that's a wonderful side effect of this, but I'm also enough of a reason, because just saying, oh, I'm going to take care of myself for my kids or for the children I serve. Yeah. It again is like a little bit of this reinforcing that it's about other
else.
People.
Yeah.
It's about, like, at what point do we become enough of a reason, you know? And I think anybody who starts to do this, for me, it felt like coming back into my body. For me, it felt like landing. It's, you know, and when you land like that, you just, you know, I'm just able to see people differently. I'm able to be with people differently. And, you know, I don't know if I had this position in my head where it was like, I'm going to do this for all the educators I serve.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't feel quite as landed. I think I'd still feel like I'm floating a little bit for other people,
right,
and not coming back to myself. And so I think that grounding, and I am enough of a reason, my voice matters, all those things, it giving yourself that permission will inevitably give others that permission. Yeah. and you'll show up in that way. But
I love that. Well, yeah. Mary, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. Yeah. I feel like, you know, hopefully I feel refreshed by this conversation. So hopefully everyone listening also does, and is that, you know, gentle reminder that you are enough and you are worth it.
Yeah.
And you deserve to feel joy and feel alive and feel in your life.
Yeah.
So hopefully folks take that away. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
I'll just end on this.
How do people find you too? I also wanted to ask.
Yeah. Well, I want to attribute some of this to Elizabeth Gilbert, the author. She's the one that planted this idea of good to well in my mind in a session I went to of hers in Ottawa. So I attribute that initial seed to her for sure.
Yeah.
And what she shared was, there's this quote she heard. I don't know who said it. I don't remember his name. But there's this famous quote where it's like, now that we don't have to be perfect, we get to be good. And Elizabeth took that quote and sort of forwarded even more and said, now that we don't have to be good, we get to be free. And that for me is what's at the heart of this. And so thank you for having me and letting me speak on this. In terms of finding me,
where can folks find you?
Unlocking Childhood is sort of my business, and so you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. I have a website, portfolio on the website, that kind of thing. But I'm on sort of the mainstream social media.
I talked a lot about social media today, so make sure I'm following you.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. You can connect with us on Instagram at Leading Inspired Learning Pod or on our website at striveswo.ca/podcast. I would love to have you tell a friend or colleague about this podcast. Thanks again for listening. Please join us next time.